Hi Year 11, as promised today we're starting our last topic, intercultural communication. Please pause this video along the way to take some notes. You will need this to study for your assessment in week 7. So here we go. It's always good to think about communication and why it's important and what difficulties might occur when we talk about communication between cultures. So there's that big picture in the middle of the screen there. It's a good thing Chuck raised his voice because the vendor will understand more for yelling. And we all probably know that person that when they travel, they just speak louder, more aggressively, and assume everyone will understand what they're saying, because if you speak louder, it must mean you're speaking more clearly. And of course, we're all really socially literate people and understand that this isn't the case. And it's important we can understand and respect other cultures and how they choose to communicate. So the first thing we're going to look at is why communication is important. And here's a little excerpt for you. Bit of context, they're talking about Newport in Wales, which might make this more funny to you. So a scene of modern Britain played out on a rail replacement bus service in Newport yesterday. A woman wearing a niqab, which is one of those Muslim head garments, was chatting to her son in another language. After 5 minutes, the man suddenly snapped, "If you're in the UK, you should speak English." At this, another passenger turned around and explained, "We're in Wales and she's speaking Welsh." So as we become more globalised and we become more interconnected, we have lots more migration and we're dealing with more people from different cultures on a regular basis. It's really important that we're not jumping to conclusions and that we are aware of people's right to speak their own language in their own country, but also not to make assumptions based off how somebody looks or where we think they might be from. Just in terms of syllabus, we're doing this dot point right here, right now. So this needs to be your heading in your book. Big heading, dot point heading, here we go. So the first thing you need for this topic is a definition, and it's at the top of the page there for you. Intercultural communication involves understanding the different cultures, languages, and customs of people from different locations and societies. That, in essence, is what this topic is about. Common language and cultural misunderstandings often occur and can be avoided if a person increases their knowledge and understanding of other people and their cultures. And we will do our case study on Japan to really broaden our horizons in that sense. It's really important we do this to become more socially culturally literate. And hopefully, post-COVID, in a world that will soon be opening up to travel, you guys will get out there, you'll go and see the world, and being able to have intercultural communication skills will be really, really important for you to do that. So traveling is just one of those situations where you might need to draw upon your intercultural communication skills. Others might be things like if you did an exchange at university, if you wanted to work in a global field where you're looking at communicating with business colleagues in other cultures, multicultural society in general. That's why the Border Studies thinks this is a really important topic for this course. So here's a bit of a scenario for you. Post-COVID, you're on your first big trip. Plane doors open at the end of your flight to your exotic holiday destination, your world backpacking trip, and you're greeted by all these unfamiliar smells, sounds, and sights. You've got apprehension. It's always going to be nervous going to new places and trying new things. So having a bit of language behind you can be really helpful in helping you feel more confident and you feel more at ease in a place that's already unknown to you. Australia, hundreds of languages are spoken each day all around the country. We're a little bit more insular on the northern beaches, and we probably see a few more European languages, a couple of Asian languages normally, but English is of course the predominant. Around the world, there are more than 7,000 languages spoken daily, so it's really important to be aware of that fact and not be biased towards English. At school, you had to start by learning a couple of different languages in year 7, year 8. Think back to your days of German or French. Maybe you did some Mandarin. And that's why, we're encouraging from an early age of people to be exploring other cultures' language and how to communicate with them, because we understand that language is a really important skill for people to be able to engage with. Not only is the language itself important, it's always nice to have a second language, be it French or German or Mandarin, but it's not just the literal translations that actually matter. It's the connotations that come with specific words or specific phrases. Think back to that game we played yesterday with all those different sayings. People might be able to translate those words into English for us, but it doesn't necessarily mean we'll understand what they're trying to say. And that's where that potential for miscommunication occurs. So we have to realize that just because something's been translated into our language doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make sense to everybody reading or hearing it. To illustrate this point, sociologists developed a concept called the cultural iceberg about how different aspects of culture help to determine language. Now, I've uploaded a soft copy of this to the due work today as like an infograph, but I'd like us to watch the video together now.
In his book, Beyond Culture, Edward T. Hall developed the iceberg analogy of culture. The cultural iceberg theory suggests that, like an iceberg, there are only some aspects of culture which are visible or which, in other words, lie above the surface of the water. These can include language, food, greetings, art, music, and many others. These are the explicit manifestations of culture. They are easy to see, taste, or hear. But according to Hall's theory, these are only the tip of the iceberg. The majority of culture, like an iceberg, lies beneath the surface. These aspects are not immediately visible. They can include worldview, religion, spiritual beliefs, decision-making models, power relationships, respect for authority, concepts of time, and many others. These are the implicit manifestations of culture. They can exert an important influence over behaviour, values, feelings, and thoughts. The more immersed we become in a cultural environment, the more these hidden aspects are revealed to us.
So we can see from that video, there's lots of different aspects of culture that we don't necessarily consider straight away when we're thinking about how we interpret what people say or how people act. Because it's also really important to remember that communication itself isn't just verbal. It's not just the things that we say, but it's the tone and enunciation that goes with them, and other non-verbal factors such as body language, facial gestures, and how close or far away you stand from somebody. It's the choice of language, the choice of words that you've got to use. And so all of these can be reflective of a person's own cultural views and own cultural connection. And that's why everybody will speak so differently. When we consider the different aspects of culture that are important to different cultures and different places, we can categorize some of these aspects into high context or low context, and then split these cultures into the categories. A high context culture is really relational and intuitive, and they're very big on interpersonal skills. Communication shouldn't be direct, it should be formal though, and humility is really important. They'll often use sophisticated language to get their point across. And we find these types of cultures commonly in the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and South America. Conversely, low cultures tend to be very individualistic and logical, action-orientated. They prefer the facts, they prefer someone to be direct, and they don't leave room for misunderstanding. Cultures that exhibit these sorts of features are North America, Australia, and Europe. This is when we can start to have cultural miscommunication. If someone from, say, Japan is communicating with someone from Australia, and the Australian person is being really direct, and the Japanese person might consider that to be quite rude, and the conversation will become quite on edge, and there might be a disagreement or misunderstanding. So it's very important to think about the context of our cultures to determine how we communicate that choice of language and those non-verbal skills that go along with it. On page 78 in your textbook, there's a really good picture that shows you kind of on a progression where different countries sit on that high to low context scale.